Well, welcome to the final talk in this series of live streams. We've looked at why Christians talk to others about their faith and how the message reaches their nearest and dearest, their friends and families. However, it's now time to appreciate how much larger this message will become. Already, the Christian message has become far larger than perhaps you might logically expect. The execution of criminals in the Roman Empire was far from unknown, and Jesus suffered the death of thieves and traitors and other despised people. His native people had rejected him and willingly pushed for him to be tormented and killed in this way. And although the Bible tells us how he was raised from the dead, and there is no evidence that remains to suggest anything else might have happened to him, not everyone accepted the fact that he had a resurrection. It was only through strenuous efforts that the hope of this event reached an area beyond Jerusalem. The news of this resurrection did spread. And this is what tells us that God has made good on his promise and will continue to do so. It provides a hope for everything, for something better, for those who want to reject the imperfect and find God's ways. It is impossible not to see this as absolutely remarkable, whatever your framework of belief. For the Christian, this is seen as the outcome of a plan which was put in place by God, but in any case, it is an extraordinary turn of events in history. And we can see that based on the power of that message, it was never going to just affect people of the same ethnicity or nationality of Jesus. It was always going to spread to the wider world. It's not just been Christians themselves who have reasoned this. In fact, the Bible actually records the assessment of the assembly of the Jewish leaders and teachers when the message was first being spread as far as possible. These were people of influence who had largely lived in hostility to the new gospel. A man called Gamaliel said, "Some time ago, Theudas appeared, claiming to be somebody, and about 400 men rallied to him. He was killed, all his followers were dispersed, and it all came to nothing. After him, Judas the Galilean appeared in the days of the census, and led a band of people in revolt. He too was killed, and all his followers were scattered. Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will only find yourselves fighting against God." And that's quoting from Acts chapter 5, taken from the New International Version. Sadly, this logic has not always been present in the way that everyone has approached the teaching of the gospel. However, from the wise reasoning of this man who stood up in front of that fairly hostile audience, we can see that this is unstoppable. The unstoppability of this message does depend on people talking about it. In today's Western world, the message is often only an undercurrent at best. Although many governments and corporations will publicly claim not to allow discrimination on religious grounds, it does not mean this hope is promoted or even agreed. So many institutions, in the same breath, also openly secular in their dealings, which means they abstain from religion in how they describe their principles and then how they operate according to those rules. We also see how there are many places where the ability to live a Christian life is nowhere near as well respected, let alone the religious teaching of this message being tolerated. The complexities of the links between all these parties means that a global change is needed to unpick the situation. And fortunately, this is also what the Bible promises. While the reassurance of the Word of God is known to be described as patient, calm and loving, often coming quietly in the dead of night, and these characteristics will be included in the change that it promises, this will not be the only way it is known. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 13, we do read, "As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you, and you will be comforted over Jerusalem." However, we also read that the need for change will result in God having to bring about the destruction of evil and those who are against him. This is not something to be done lightly, and will be of great comfort to those who have tried to live lives in harmony with goodness and truth, and to shy from the corruption of this world. This change will also be dramatic. In verse 15 of the same chapter, we read that, "See, the Lord is coming with fire, and his chariots are like a whirlwind. He will bring down his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire." Now, the heading of this chapter in the Bible is sometimes marked with the words judgment and hope. And this gives us a good idea about the two sides to the conversation. Fundamentally, to hold the Bible as any sort of appreciable source of hope, you have to believe that God can do what he says. And for that, he needs to be omnipotent, or having a universal and unstoppable power. In turn, this power is capable of affecting the whole earth, and as such, everyone will need to find a way to appreciate this event, this change for themselves. Going back to the thoughts about the work of Jesus, we also see how this power is seemingly otherworldly in scale, and that the followers of Christ need to be those on the side of truth about this work, truth about hope. Let's look at some words of Jesus taken from the account of his trial, as recorded in John chapter 18. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Human beings also have free will, which is where you willingly choose a course with your own mind, even if God knows the outcome. So everyone will have a choice about which way they take these events. Before we move on, let's take a moment to look at the description of the moment when God's power is revealed. A lot of biblical descriptions mention the divide between light and darkness. So in Isaiah chapter 60, it says, "See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples. But the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you." The plan of God to change the world once and for all will involve the return of his Son, Jesus Christ, who has not been seen visibly for nearly 2 millennia. We know that people will attempt to pretend to be Jesus, but this will be overtaken by the awe of his arrival, even though not everyone will accept Jesus, even when his appearance is made very clear. So reading from Matthew chapter 24. "At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, "Here is the Messiah," or "There he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, "There he is out in the wilderness," do not go out, or "Here he is in the inner rooms," do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. In today's climate, we can imagine just how fast the news will be spread. There is probably a good reason why humanity has the skills to develop such a lot of technology that allows instant communication. The ingenuity of this communication between human beings is an extremely shadowy parallel with how prayer works between humans and God, but very far removed in terms of beauty and the way the accessibility of prayer is universal. The skill is undoubtedly a mimic of what God has given, and even though it has been corrupted, we know how quickly and efficiently people find ways to speak to each other. As we've mentioned, not all the talk about this will be good, even though some will be very good indeed. People become set in their ways, and then they take a side. One voice will try to drown out another, but only good will prevail. One side will try to persuade the other. Despite the undoubted time of conversation to come, maybe this should not be our focus. It is better to be prepared for this beforehand, so that you can remain in a place of safety and hope and maintain determination. From Romans chapter 2 we read, "But because of the stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed. God will repay each person according to what they have done. To those who by persistence in doing good seek glory, honour and immortality, he will give eternal life. But for those who are self-seeking and who reject the truth and follow evil, there will be wrath and anger. There will be trouble and distress for every human being who does evil, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. But glory, honour and peace for everyone who does good, first for the Jew and then for the Gentile." Though it is much easier said than done, a Christian believer should not worry about the different reactions they will experience at this point in the future, but rather how they help others who need to join the conversation. It will be an opportunity for the Christian to help others like never before. Those who have never had hope will be offered it, even though there will be some who try to persuade them to resist it. In those terms, hopefully there is not too much question for you about which side to pick. Hopefully you will join with those of true biblical faith now and be ready to tell others about the good news that the Bible has. It is amazing to think about being on the positive side of the biggest chance to persuade people of the joy of the good news. But it is a daunting and challenging step to take. The one thing which is most crucial, if you have never done so, is to start to prepare your mind to accept good and reject corruption and evil. After all, before even the act of being baptized or worshipping in a congregation of believers or living according to the instructions of God, belief is the first step. This comes from conversations and discussions now, as well as personal meditation and finding what has been written down in the Bible. It is a steep learning curve, but one which clearly has amazing rewards on offer. As believers in God, we will try to talk to you now. Other Christians may do so as well. Never lose sight of the fact that if you read the Bible, you can already think about what the world will debate and wrestle with in the future. When everyone is talking, make sure you are ready for that voice in your mind to agree with hope and justice and peace. To end, Psalm 72 talks to us about the way the future King, Jesus Christ, will bring goodness to those who need it, to change the future so that it is full of blessings, which are words we all need to hear. And so in that psalm, in verses 11 to 14, and also in verse 17, we read, "May all kings bow down to him, and all nations serve him. For he will deliver the needy who cry out, the afflicted who have no one to help. He will take pity on the weak and the needy, and save the needy from death. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight. May his name endure forever. May it continue as long as the sun. Then all nations will be blessed through him, and they will call him blessed." This will have a global impact, so we invite you to work out how you will be talking about it. So thank you for joining us to consider these things with us today. Our next live stream will be on the 5th of November, so do join us then for a one-off session talking about the key to lasting happiness. Look out for more details on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel soon. Thank you for listening.